Forest of Mirrors. Some trails aren't meant to be marked. That's what the ranger had said when he handed them the backcountry permit. His voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp as he nodded toward the northeast quadrant of the map. No real paths up that way, he warned. If you head too far in, don't expect to come out the same way. Seth laughed it off. We'll be fine. We've got GPS and gear. Worst case, we retrace. The ranger didn't smile. That's the thing, he said. Up there, nothing retraces. They should have turned back then. Instead, they hiked on. 4 of them, loaded with lightweight packs and misplaced confidence. Seth, the planner, whose maps were laminated and whose compass never left his belt. Kara, his girlfriend, pragmatic and steady. Luis, the sarcastic medic with a taste for risk. And Dana, the quiet one who always seemed to notice what others missed. They entered the forest on the second morning, crossing the last marked junction into a zone the ranger had only called unmanaged territory. From above, the satellite maps showed nothing unusual. Dense canopy, no roads, no water, just forest. But almost immediately, things felt off. The air was too still. The pine needles beneath their boots crunched too loudly. Every direction looked the same. Straight trees, evenly spaced, the undergrowth suspiciously minimal. It was like stepping into a curated illusion of wilderness. By noon, they'd made good progress, but hadn't seen a single bird, squirrel, or even a bug. No webs either, Dana murmured. No spider nests, no fungus. Like nothing lives here. Maybe it's too dry, Kara offered, swiping her forehead. But even as she said it, her eyes moved warily through the trees. They stopped for lunch on a flat patch near a small rise. Seth checked his GPS. We're still on course. We'll pitch camp near that ridge. Should give us a view. Luis yawned. This place is boring as hell. Creepy boring. The ridge was only half a mile ahead, but by the time they reached it, the light had shifted strangely. Seth glanced up, still early afternoon, but the shadows stretched long and narrow, as if the sun had decided to lie. Their camp came together quickly. Tents spaced in a triangle, fire ring, a log dragged for seating. Seth felt better once things looked civilized. That night, they sat around the fire trading stories. Luis tried to scare them with tales about skinwalkers and feral cannibals, but none of it stuck. The woods were too clean for that, too empty. Eventually, they drifted off to sleep. Seth woke to whispers. Not voices, whispers, like breath sliding through leaves, like syllables from a language just beyond hearing. He sat up, straining his ears. Silence. He unzipped his tent and stepped into the cold. The fire had burned to coals. The trees stood black against the starlit sky. Nothing moved. He turned and froze. His reflection stood 10 feet away. It looked like him, dressed like him, but it wasn't a mirror. It stood there, breathing, watching. Seth blinked, and it was gone. He stood still for a full minute before retreating back into his tent. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, he'd almost convinced himself it was a dream. Until Kara emerged from her tent pale and wide-eyed. "Did you?" she began. Seth nodded slowly. See something? She nodded back. Luis came out next, rubbing his eyes. Okay, who's the jackass that walked around camp last night? I thought it was a bear at first, but it didn't make any noise. Dana was last to join them. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes flicked around the clearing like she was counting trees. I think we should leave, she said softly. Luis scoffed. Now? We just got here. Dana shook her head. Something's wrong. Really wrong. Seth looked at his GPS again. The signal was weak. The map glitched and showed them about a mile west of their actual location, over a ravine they hadn't seen. Compass still works, he said, forcing calm into his voice. We'll keep it simple. Follow the bearing we came in on. Head back the way we came. They packed fast, but within 30 minutes of walking, the forest began to loop. Kara stopped first. Wait, this log. The others halted. It was the same fallen pine they'd passed 20 minutes earlier. Seth checked the compass again. Still east, still correct. They continued. 20 minutes later, they found their own boot prints. Dana knelt beside them, staring at the tread. That's my left heel. See the cut in the sole? Luis swore. We're going in circles, but we haven't turned once. The forest hadn't changed. Every tree looked like the last. Every patch of ground was the same moss and pine needle blend. No landmarks, no incline, no sound. And then came the mirror. They found it at the base of a tree, perfectly vertical and about 6 feet tall. No frame, just a rectangle of glass or something like it, smooth and silver. It reflected the forest behind them, but not themselves. Seth waved. Nothing in the mirror moved. Luis picked up a rock and tossed it. The mirror didn't shatter. It rippled. The surface bent, like disturbed water. Then the reflection changed. Their camp appeared, flames flickering, tents undisturbed. And in the foreground, 4 figures sat around the fire. Seth stepped forward. That's us. No, Dana said. Not us. Watch. The figures moved, talked, laughed. Then one stood, Seth's double, and walked straight into the trees. A moment later, the image looped. Again. Again. Like a tape on repeat. The reflection wasn't showing the past or the present. It was showing something else. We need to go, Kara said. Pick a direction and run if we have to. So they did. They ran for nearly an hour, breath ragged, legs burning, only to stumble into another clearing with another mirror. This time, it was Kara's reflection that moved first. It turned to face her, slowly, deliberately. Then it smiled. Kara recoiled. It's not me. That's not me. Her reflection raised a hand and placed it on the inside of the glass. Then, without moving her real hand, Kara felt something cold brush her palm. She screamed and stumbled back. Luis stepped in and hurled a branch at the surface. It passed through like smoke. The mirror shimmered and vanished. Just trees again. Seth was shaking. What the hell is this place? It's watching us, Dana whispered. It learned us. and now it's playing with us. Seth looked around. Every tree now bore something shiny, tiny shards, like slivers of mirror. At first, they'd seemed like dewdrops. Now they saw themselves in every direction, hundreds of tiny reflections, watching, waiting. Luis approached one and squinted. The face inside smiled. Then the shard split, growing into a full panel in seconds, like liquid glass erupting from bark. Luis backed away. Nope, I'm done. A sound echoed through the woods. Laughter. But it came from above. They looked up. High in the canopy, dozens of reflections hung like lanterns, twisting, swinging gently, each one showing a different version of themselves. In one, Dana's face was bloodied. In another, Kara stared with hollow black eye. One showed Luis convulsing on the ground, his mouth open in a silent scream. The laughter stopped. The forest grew still again. Then the mirrors began to fall. Like rain, glass rained down in slow motion silence, shards embedding in trees, moss, and dirt, but never breaking. They ran. They didn't stop until night. Their legs failed them more than once. By the time they collapsed in a tight cluster between 3 trees, their throats were raw and their minds frayed. Seth took stock. Luis had a gash down his arm. Kara's hands were cut from a fall. Dana was muttering to herself. "This place is a trap," Kara said, barely audible. "It's not a forest, it's a structure, a loop." "A mirror maze," Luis croaked. "Not just mirrors," Dana said. "Reflections." Seth looked at her. She met his gaze. "You remember what the ranger said? Nothing retraces." It wasn't a metaphor. This place doesn't reflect you. It reflects what you can be, what it wants you to be. Seth asked the question none of them wanted to hear. And what happens when we match? Seth didn't answer his own question. No one did. The fire they'd managed to build was weak, flickering as if unsure whether it should exist. Shadows curled around them like animals just outside the ring of light. Kara sat closest to the fire, knees pulled to her chest, rocking gently. Luis had tied a bandana around his wounded arm. But the cut was deeper than it looked. Dark blood soaked through. He hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. Dana kept staring into the woods. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Then something moved between the trees. Not an animal, not a person. A mirror. It floated 6 feet off the ground, gliding sideways between trunks like a drifting jellyfish. No sound, just motion. Another appeared, then another. 5 in total, surrounding the camp in a slow orbit. Each one showed a different version of the group, sleeping, screaming, burning, dissected. Luis stood suddenly. "No, I'm not doing this. I'm not dying here." Seth reached out. But Luis was already sprinting into the dark. They heard his footsteps for a few seconds, then silence, then the scream. It came all at once, high and fast and sharp, and then was cut off. Seth grabbed a headlamp and followed. "Kara, stay with Dana," he shouted behind him, crashing through the underbrush. "Luis!" The forest was impossibly dark, the trees too close. the light from his headlamp barely reaching more than 10 feet ahead. He stumbled into a clearing and found Luis, what was left of him. Luis was suspended between two trees, impaled on jagged shards of mirrored glass that jutted out like thorns from the trunks. His body hung limp, skewered through the chest, arms, and leg. His eyes were wide, his mouth stretched in an impossible scream. The glass pulsed. Inside each shard, Seth saw himself. 100 versions, all watching, all smiling. And then Luis moved, just a twitch. But it wasn't his body, it was his reflection. In the glass, Luis was standing up, whole, grinning, arms spread wide like he'd just walked on stage. Then, one by one, the shards started to crack. Not shatter. Crack, like a shell about to hatch. Seth backed away in horror. The reflections began to crawl out. They peeled themselves from the glass like molted skin, dripping mirror fluid as they dropped to the forest floor. 1, then 2, then 6. Each one a twisted version of Luis. Wrong proportions, unnatural limbs, heads tilted too far, joints bent backward, but wearing his face. Seth turned and ran. Behind him, he heard them following. No footsteps, just the sound of dragging glass. He made it back to camp, breathless and pale. "They got him," he gasped. It wasn't just reflections. They came out. They're loose. Kara stood slowly, holding a long stick like a spear. "Where's Luis?" Seth just shook his head. Dana hadn't moved. She was still whispering. "They're not mirrors," she said softly. "They're gates." Kara turned to her. "What are you talking about?" Dana looked up, eyes glassy. "Each one is a door, and they're feeding. Every time we see ourselves, they take something. Memory, voice, form. They're building their own world on the other side." Seth pointed to the dark. They've already crossed over. A rustle echoed from the edge of the camp. They raised their lights. A figure stood between the trees. It was Luis, or rather, it looked like Luis. He waved, too slowly. "Hey guys," he said. "I found a way out." Kara stepped back. "Don't you dare come closer." Luis took a step forward. The sound he made wasn't footsteps. It was the soft grind of glass on bark. "Luis is dead," Seth said. The thing smiled wider. "Am I?" From behind him, more shapes emerged. 4, 7, 10. All reflections, all twisted. Each wore someone's face. Luis, Kara, Dana, even Seth. One wore no face at all, just a sheet of shifting mirror where the head should be. "Run!" Seth yelled. They turned and bolted again, Kara dragging Dana by the arm as they plunged deeper into the trees. Behind them, the reflections gave chase. But they didn't run like humans. They glided, hopped, crawled sideways. Some even disappeared into the trunks of trees and emerged elsewhere, like shadows slipping between cracks in the world. Seth heard Kara scream and turned in time to see one of the things grab her leg. Its hand was glass, fingers razor thin. He swung a branch hard, shattering the thing's head into shards. It screamed, not with sound, but with reflected sound. The echo of Kara's voice distorted into a shriek. Kara scrambled away, blood dripping from her calf. They didn't stop until they reached a clearing with no mirrors. Just earth. Just trees. It felt dead, but quiet. They collapsed to the ground, panting. Dana knelt beside a mossy stone. "This is the eye," she whispered. Seth turned. "What?" She brushed away the moss. Etched into the stone was a perfect oval, a stylized eye, the iris made of spirals. "I've seen this before," Dana said. "It was in one of the mirrors, behind us. Always behind us." Kara looked pale. "What does it mean?" Dana pressed her palm to the stone. The ground trembled. Then the moss cleared away, peeling back like skin, and revealed a pit. Circular, black, bottomless. "No," Kara said, stepping away. "Absolutely not. That's not a way out." Dana's eyes were unfocused. "It's the center, the source. The only way through is in." A whisper curled through the trees. It sounded like Luis again. "Come back. It's better here. No fear, no pain. You can be anything you want." Donna stepped toward the pit. Seth grabbed her arm. "Don't." She turned to him, her expression strangely peaceful. "They only want what we leave behind." "What does that mean?" "They can't take us. We have to give it." Then she yanked free and leapt. Into the pit. Gone. Seth and Kara stood in stunned silence. Then something howled in the forest. Not a reflection. Something bigger. The trees groaned. The sky rippled. From the pit came a faint light. Blue, cold, pulsing in rhythm with Seth's own heartbeat. Kara grabbed his hand. "We have to go. Anywhere but here." They turned and ran again. Only now the mirrors were everywhere, falling from the trees, rising from the ground, each one twisted, warped, spinning as they moved. They began to stack into towers, walls, corridors of reflection. And Seth realized with sudden horror, the forest wasn't made of trees anymore. It was made of mirrors. Each trunk, each branch, glass. The reflections didn't follow now. They waited. A fork opened ahead, 2 mirrored paths. Kara pulled left. Seth hesitated. His reflection went right and smiled. Seth stood frozen, staring down the mirrored corridor to his right. His reflection stood mid-path, motionless, not mimicking, watching. The smile on his face widened slowly, stretching just a fraction too far. Then it raised one hand and pointed at Kara. "Seth," she whispered behind him. "We can't split up, please." But Seth couldn't stop staring. The reflection was no longer just a copy. It was confident. "It knows something I don't." Another step from the reflection, slow, deliberate, almost inviting. Kara tugged his arm. "Come on." The mirrors shifted around them, humming now, low vibrations through the soles of their boots. The paths were changing, rearranging like puzzle pieces. Soon, they'd close off completely. Seth made a decision. He turned toward Kara. "We stay together. No more chasing ghosts." They sprinted left, through the tunnel of silver. The mirrored surfaces moved with them. Flickers of themselves appeared like stuttering frames, Seth looking older, Kara bleeding, Dana falling endlessly. Each reflection lasted only a heartbeat. Kara stumbled. Seth caught her, and his hand brushed a mirrored wall. For a moment, just a moment, he felt a second hand gripping his on the other side and pulling. He yanked his arm back, the skin raw and ice cold. "We're not going to make it," Kara panted. "Yes, we are. We just need to keep moving." The corridor ended in a wide open space, a clearing of mirrors shaped like a perfect circle. In the center stood a monolith. It wasn't glass. It was obsidian, black and cold, a vertical slab etched with a spiral eye symbol. Around it, mirrors hovered in orbit, spinning gently like moons. "Another gate?" Kara said. "No," Seth whispered. "The core." Then the mirrors stopped spinning. The surface of the monolith lit up with pulsing veins of silver, and the forest went silent. A high-pitched ring filled the air, vibrating their teeth. The mirrors began to show new images, ones they hadn't seen before. Seth, kneeling, begging for mercy. Kara, covered in blood. Donna, eyes missing. Luis, standing in a forest of glass, laughing as he peeled off his own skin like cellophane. "No," Kara said, backing away. "These aren't futures. These are options." The air rippled. From the monolith, a single figure stepped forward. It wore Seth's face. Not a reflection this time, not mirrored. Real. Flesh. The clone moved toward him, calm like it belonged. Seth raised a stick defensively. Kara reached for her knife. But the clone ignored them and knelt before the monolith, placing a hand on it. The entire forest shuddered. And then more emerged. A Kara, a Dana, a second Luis, headless, twitching, crawling. A third Kara with her jaw unhinged like a snake's. They came pouring out from the edges of the clearing like ants from a nest. The air filled with whispers. Thousands of them, overlapping, echoing. "Give us the real. Keep what you see. Trade the flesh. Leave the mind." Kara screamed and threw her knife. It stuck into the chest of the nearest clone. It didn't bleed. Instead, its skin cracked, revealing silver liquid beneath, mercury-like and writhing. It pulled the knife out and kept walking. "We have to destroy the monolith," Seth shouted. He grabbed a large rock and rushed the slab. But as he brought the stone down, his reflection met him halfway. Not on glass, on ground. The clone intercepted him, grabbed his wrist mid-swing, and grinned. Its grip was unbelievably strong. "Don't you understand?" It said in his voice. "You're not leaving. You're joining." Seth headbutted it. The clone recoiled just enough for him to swing again, this time connecting. The monolith cracked. A ripple echoed outward like a shock wave. The clones screamed in unison. Some fell. Some dissolved. Others shattered into mist. The mirrored walls began to collapse, falling inward, crashing like glass skyscrapers. Kara grabbed his hand. "Keep breaking it." Seth raised the rock again, cracked it a second time. A hole appeared in the center of the monolith, a swirling void. Through it, he saw something. Outside. Trees. The real forest. The one they'd left behind. "We can get out," he shouted. Kara ran toward it. The ground split. A hand, her hand, grabbed her ankle. She looked down and saw herself. The second Kara, bloodied, eyes white, crawling from the dirt. Seth lunged to help, but 2 more clones grabbed his arms. He screamed and struggled, watching Kara fall, half of her already pulled into the earth. "Kara!" She met his eyes. "Go." Her voice was calm. Too calm. He hesitated. That's when he saw it. The Kara being dragged down wasn't the real one. She wasn't bleeding. Her shirt was wrong. The eyes too wide. He turned. Another Kara stood behind him. This one was holding the real Kara's knife and covered in dirt. "No," he said. She tilted her head, smiled, and ran into the portal. Seth screamed, yanked himself free, and dove after her. But the hole snapped shut. The monolith crumbled to dust, and the forest was quiet. 1 week later, a rescue team found her wandering along the edge of the trail. Kara. She was dehydrated, disoriented, and couldn't remember how long she'd been gone. No sign of Seth, Dana, or Luis. She told them there was a forest where the trees reflected your thoughts, where the path always led back to itself. A forest full of mirrors. They chalked it up to trauma and exposure. The ranger recognized her name. "I warned them," he muttered. "Told them not to go off map." Kara was taken to a hospital, evaluated, cleared, and eventually returned to her apartment. But things didn't feel the same. The mirrors in her home were wrong, delayed, echoing. Sometimes she caught a reflection smiling when she wasn't. And sometimes, in the shower, she swore her reflection whispered things in Seth's voice. "You left me. You let me die." But it wasn't guilt. Because Kara hadn't left anyone behind. Because this Kara wasn't the real one. And she didn't need mirrors anymore. She'd brought the forest back with her. Thank you for listening to this story. Your support means a lot and helps keep these tales coming. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to subscribe and follow for more dark and immersive stories just like this one. New horrors await. Don't miss what's coming next.